We've got a weekend of college baseball we want to talk about. Also, some MLB headlines. None are that big, except a certain borderline $300 million guy is not playing shortstop anymore. And then we got to talk to you about the top 10 third basemen in all of baseball. Happy Monday. This is the Just Baseball Show. It's presented by BetMGM. As always, new promo code Peter told you about for 2 minutes before the instrumental and the intro rolled. Jack, Aram, I went to the Y on Sunday. We're recording on Sunday afternoon. I went to the Y on Sunday morning. Adult dodgeball tournament.
Oh, that's fun.
Okay, so my initial thought was weird. And then I thought about it for 5 more seconds and I was like, wait, I would kill to be involved in an adult dodgeball tournament. And dodgeball, for the baseball crowd, I assume a lot of people listening to this played baseball or softball growing up. You probably loved dodgeball day. For me, that was like the day where you can impress the pretty girls with your howitzer.
Oh yeah. Pause. No, that's one where like I feel like it actually would be like the opposite of pause actually, but for me it was like the one time where I could really stand out and just let it rip. But the funny thing is, by the end, like by the time we got to high school and we were doing it, it would just hurt too bad. You know, I would have let those things rip. So now if I ever try to play dodgeball, I get the tingling in my hand and in my thumb. I can't throw anything anymore. But no, dodgeball, I'm all in on that. My school got really soft though at the end, and like they would only let us play with these like foam balls. That just barely, they'd almost like flutter in the air, like they like 40 inches of induced vertical break, just kind of taking off in the air. You couldn't really throw it hard, and you know that's the world we live in now, where you can't hit people too hard with a dodgeball.
So I was learning what spin and carry does to a ball because of those foam dodgeballs, and we were actually using those from like elementary school upwards. We never really used the rubber balls, and as a person that like genuinely, whenever I threw a baseball, it had like arm side run. It was just one of those natural left-handed things. I would throw a dodgeball and I would shoot for like their left ankle and it would like peel up to their gonads.
Yeah.
And that's just how I went about it.
Just a nice little two-seam with ride. Two-seam ride. If you could master that pitch in Major League Baseball, to have like the run and ride is like insane.
It's like
cut ride.
Like
we talk
reverse,
about run and ride is like
steal.
impossible. Yeah, it's like impossible.
No, that would be so cool. So yeah, envious of the adult dodgeball tournament that happened today. You're down in South Florida. You did not get to the light, I assume. You did not get to any college baseball this weekend. Are you going to go to Marlin spring training on Monday?
Either Monday or Tuesday, I'm going to swing by.
Okay.
I'm just hearing rumors that Sixto Sanchez hit 90. So, you know, it's like I got to see that in real life.
60 feet? Was that from
that's word on the street. But also, actually, Mel Stoudemire Jr., Marlins pitching coach, kind of came out and said, Sixto doesn't really look the same anymore. He's not Sixto, which we knew, but
no shit.
It's wild. You know, it's nice to actually hear the team. You know, obviously unfortunate, but like, acknowledge reality here. And what the Marlins are going to probably do is give him another few weeks, and then I think as the season gets closer, like they either have to put him on the 60-day IL again, which I don't even think they can do because he's healthy. He's now healthy. He's just his arm's shot.
Billy Epler just got suspended for a year.
So they're not going to mess with that. And God forbid the Marlins get fined any amount. I mean, I think if they get a parking ticket, Bruce Sherman's trying to figure out how they're going to pay that. So I'd imagine that there's probably going to be a scenario here where he probably gets DFA'd, I think, in the next few weeks. This is my guess. I don't have any sources or info on that. This is what I think is going to happen. I think he's not going to throw any harder. The bullpens are going to continue to look rough. And I think he gets DFA'd in a few weeks. And it's going to be like a very unceremonious end to what is a really depressing story that is Sixto Sanchez.
Who claims him and why is it the Chicago White Sox?
It would be on brand, right? They already claimed Davy Garcia.
And they claim Patino. They claim Tuki Toussaint.
Yeah.
They've done a lot of that.
I think nobody, to be honest. I think nobody. But you never know. I mean, the Yankees claim Jordan Grosjean, so you never know in this world.
Crazy. I want to run through a couple of the projected top 10 picks rapid fire in the opening weekend of college baseball. A guy that was not in the projected top 10 that Peter Flaherty of Baseball America told us on Friday could absolutely sneak in is Jonathan Santucci out of Duke. And that was the first game of the college baseball season. I was tapped into that, especially because it was against Indiana too. Santucci sat 95-96, 5 innings, shutout, 4 hits, 7 Ks, 2 walks. He looked the part, man. And I'm going to mention another guy that could be pitcher two that I don't think should be pitcher two. This guy screamed pitcher two in his first outing of the year.
Yeah, he looked great. That was a fun start to watch too. Just it's like he went from last year where Santucci, he was once like more of a two-way guy too, where he was hitting a little bit. He can hit some nukes too from the left side. But now just focusing on pitching, he looked different because there was a little bit of command issues, I think, through spurts last year.
Yeah.
And he was just pounding the zone against Indiana, just attacking these hitters, a lot of confidence, fastball out of ride. And it was like, okay. So that's what's fun about this is, yeah, we have our grouping of those top 10-ish guys, but there's so many other names that are going to start to catapult themselves into that top 10 conversation. Yeah. And Santucci's just a perfect example.
So a couple of bats that I want to hit before we get to the pitching thing. Charlie Condon has had a weekend. Oh my God. How many miles per hour do you kind of add when you see a guy popped a 118 mile an hour double, 118.2 off the wall and left? Does that translate with Wood to like a 112, 111?
Yeah, the general, and I think it's at the end of the day, you know, it's there's no like perfect conversion rate, but I think the general is like 3 to 5 miles per hour.
Okay,
so probably closer to the 3 side. So I'd say probably like 4 is a safe number to subtract.
All right, so we're talking about a 114, 115 mile an hour double from Charlie Condon. He hit another ball well. I think it was over 110 as well for a single. This guy, you know, I know that we talked about on the call-up when we were doing the top 10 draft guys. We talked about maybe his limitations defensively. I watched on Sunday, he just pretty much jumped and fell over the bullpen fence, robbing a foul ball and made a catch. Like, it was a great SportsCenter top 10 catch that he just made in left field. This guy looks the part through the front weekend.
That was the guy that, you know, I had the least information on before. So we just put out a mock draft as well. So definitely go check that out on justbaseball.com. I put a lot of time into, you know, our first iteration of a mock draft and talked about the top 10 prospects on the call up, but we'll talk a little bit more about the mock draft on the call up too. But when I was doing the research and diving into some of these players, you know, just a little bit further to give some more context to the write-ups in the mock draft, Condon was a guy I didn't have a lot on because he was redshirted, you know, 2 years ago. He was a redshirt freshman last year. So to see it from that lens, I was like, okay, let me watch some more of this guy. And I was floored watching some of the video from last year, the power, but also the feel to hit combined with that when you're 6'6". And I legitimately texted Pete Flaherty immediately and said, is there a world where Condon could go 1-1? And Pete was like, he's got to really hit, but it's not impossible. And I honestly think, like, if he shows that he can play a little outfield and he's hitting the way that we think he can hit and the way that he's looked so far, he's going to have a strong case in the top few picks there because it's the combination of the feel to hit and the power. But you mentioned covering some ground in the outfield. If he can prove that he's not just locked in at first base, I wouldn't be shocked if he's a, you know, top 3 pick as well.
Yeah, we kind of described it as early goings Matt Olson, where, he was clearly a first baseman, but he survived in right field and survived in corners. And that can probably be Charlie Condon. We've talked about Jonathan Santucci at Duke, pitcher at Duke, and then Charlie Condon, who's an outfielder at Georgia. Another 1-1 candidate. You wanted to see juice and you wanted to see shortstop acumen from Travis Bazzana at Oregon State. And we've seen juice. 2-homer day on Sunday, 3 homers in the opening weekend. For Bazzana, I saw the second homer on Sunday, elevated fastball left on left that he got his hands in and drilled. Could he jump Weatherholt with, like, if Weatherholt had a 15-homer spring and Bazzana put up a 20-homer spring? Do you place a lot of value in that?
Yeah, well, I think they could pretty much put up the same numbers they put up last year. And if Bazzana is playing short and showing that he can play a passable short, I mean, that could be a separator too, right? He's like, you're talking about 2 guys that are, we talked about it on the call up too, about there's so many of the top players in this class, top hitters in this class don't play premium positions. And that kind of leaves it open for someone to separate themselves. Weatherholt's going to play second base. So I think if Bazzana can prove that he can play a shortstop, that'd be one separator. And then 2, if Bazzana can show that he's got a little bit more thump than people thought, I think he could easily leapfrog him because I think that's the one thing that Weatherholt kind of has on Bazana is like the bat speed's just ridiculous. He looks like he has a little bit more juice, but if Bazana's matching the power output, I think he could easily leapfrog him.
Yeah. Last thing on the college front, there are two guys that stole the show headline wise on the mound this weekend. It was Iowa's Brody Brecht and it was Wake Forest Chase Burns. They had very different starts. And Brecht, I think I sent you the tweet from Baseball America that was like, have a day in all caps, Brody Brecht. Punched out 11 across 4 1/3. Okay, look at the other numbers that Brecht put up against Seton Hall. I'm going to give you the full line right now. Brody Brecht against Seton Hall, 4 1/3, 1 hit, 1 run, 11 Ks, 6 walks, a hit by pitch. That's 8 base runners in 4 1/3, 100 pitches, 53 for strikes. And as of right now, this guy's a 2-pitch mix. It's fastball slider for the most part. 53% strike rate overall. You walk 6 against Seton Hall. Man, like it's really hard to spin this as being pitcher 2 for me, especially when this guy is rocking a walks per nine, I think over 6 in his college career right now.
Yeah, he's so fun to watch because of what can be and what he's physically capable of. But you hit the nail on the head, man. Like, look, there's going to be some other prep guys I think that start to show out and probably climb and gain some ground. And then we just talked about Santucci. We just talked about some other arms that I think have been really impressive and could be impressive. You look at Ben Hess from Alabama. Had a really good outing. I think he's a guy that could end up starting to climb up there a little bit. I mean, it's interesting to see like what Brecht's stock's going to look like, but like it was exciting to see the stuff again on display. Right. But again, it wasn't like he was facing LSU where he can't just pound the zone with fastballs. Like he can just throw fastballs in the zone against Seton Hall and overpower them for the most part, and he still walks 6. So he's going to need to show some progress in the command department, or else we might see his draft stock slip a little bit, and that might be a guy that falls a little bit further in mocks. We had him 12 to the Red Sox just because figured it was a perfect fit given what the Red Sox infrastructure is now in terms of pitching development. But there's only so much you can develop. Yeah. Like he's going to have to show some on his own this year, and he's got time. It's just the first start, but it's something to monitor.
So Paul Skeens was viewed as the best amateur pitching prospect since Steven Strasburg. If we get a full year of what we saw on Saturday from Wake Forest Chase Burns, like that's not far off from what we saw from Skeens last year. Chase Burns is so clearly the best pitcher in college baseball this year, best pitcher in the draft class. He could do the Skeens thing where he makes a run for the Golden Spikes as a pitcher. Chase Burns against Illinois in his Wake Forest debut, 6 innings, 3 hit shutout ball, punched out 10, 1 walk, 88 pitches across 6 innings, 58 for strikes, 4 base runners in 6 innings. This data is per Burt Granger of D1 Baseball. He got his fastball sitting 97 at 2,500 RPMs, and he got his slider sitting 87 at 2,900 RPMs. This guy got 14 swings and misses with his fastball. That was, it was bullying. And I sat there and I watched the front 4 of the 6, and I was like, how's any guy not named Alvarez, Judge, Trout, Ohtani gonna touch this cat? He may not be touched before he gets to the major leagues.
It looks like something clicked for him. He's a totally, I wouldn't say totally different pitcher because you saw the flashes,
but it was like in a reliever role.
Yeah, this is a different guy, though. Like he has totally elevated himself from a command standpoint, his mechanics, even just the feel for his secondaries now. He's even sprinkling in some change-ups that are, like 92, 93, like the power change that you see, with some of these like Marlins pitchers, and now you're starting to just see kind of take over baseball. He's got something going on here, and I think you've hit it perfectly where it's him when we're talking about pitchers, and then kind of everybody else. And look, even if you're not a huge college baseball fan, if you happen to see that Chase Burns is on the bump, just tune in. It's really fun to watch the top pitchers in college baseball pitch. Don't wait till the College World Series or until they're on ESPN every given night. ESPN Plus has a lot of these games. Yes. And a lot of people kind of ask, where can I watch? ESPN Plus is usually what's the other one? Flow Media.
You got Flow Sports, Flow Baseball.
Sports.
But ESPN Plus will carry pretty much everything, and you've got the ACC Network Extra for Wake Forest, and that'll be part of your Watch ESPN app. So go to the Watch ESPN app, and you will get pretty much every college baseball game in America.
Yeah, and if you tune into on the ESPN Plus app every once in a while, if you tune into a mid-major basketball game, you might hear Jack McMullen.
Yeah, Maction, baby. That's it. Although my basketball slate is done for the year. So
I had a good time watching. Who were they playing? It was Ball State versus
Ohio. Game went to OT.
That was a good game. I watched the whole thing.
I know. Nuts. All right, let's move on to the big league stuff here. Interesting note out of Padres camp. Xander Bogaerts is going to play second base. That in turn moves Ha-Seong Kim to short. Is it the right on-field move? Absolutely it is. Is it weird? I saw this note. They've paid 3 shortstops $300 million and none are playing shortstop. You didn't pay Manny Machado to play shortstop. You paid him as a third baseman. But I think it's fun.
Also, calling Machado a shortstop there, it's just a narrative suitor.
It's totally a narrative suitor. Like, hey, what helps my claim? And that is what helps their claim. But they did pay Fernando Tatis $340 million to be the shortstop of the future, and he's playing right field at a platinum glove level, but he's playing right field. They paid Xander Bogaerts $280 million. He shows up. First question he's asked is, where are you going to play? And he said, I'm going to play shortstop. I'm the Padres shortstop. And now a year later, that's not the case anymore. I find it really interesting that happened. That being said, credit to Mike Schilt for just laying the hammer down and saying, this is how we look like the best version of the San Diego Padres.
Look, enough of the this is our best player, so he has to play short.
Yeah.
If you're interested in winning ball games and there's a better setup defensively, do that. I've had enough of the but we signed him to do this. If you have a better option, you have a better option. Enough of the appeasing the superstars. And I will say, props to Xander Bogaerts for being accepting of it, but also deal with it. I don't want to give him too much credit because it's if you're not playing a better defensive shortstop than Ha-Seong Kim, then be prepared to move. That's
and be selfless.
The nature of the business. You're still getting paid. You're still getting paid a lot of money. I think it's a great move for them for multiple reasons. One, I think it makes them better, of course, especially in a situation where you're not going to have Machado. And I think this is a big part of why they did it. You're not going to have Machado at third base for the beginning of the season, most likely because of the elbow surgery. So, that's a guy that was great defensively for you at the hot corner. Now, you might have Matt Batten there. I don't know who's playing third base for them this year. But the point is, it's going to be a defensive downgrade. And do you want to have I know Bogaerts has improved a lot defensively, but if you don't have a great defensive third baseman and then you have a passable defensive shortstop, you're giving up a lot more on the left side for what? Just because Xander's our guy and we're paying him and we don't want to upset him, and then we're going to put our best defender on the right side at second base. Makes no sense. So I do like that they're doing that because they don't have Machado at third base for the beginning of the season. Kim is going to cover a lot of ground out there and is going to be an asset for them and be more valuable. Also, Ha-Seong Kim is going to have a 4.5, maybe. Ha-Seong Kim could have a 5-WAR season this year. Yes. He's playing shortstop, by the way. So that's also awesome. I'm here for going into free agency. This is great for Ha-Seong Kim. He's probably going to now make himself a whole another $30-40 million potentially if he plays the way that we think he can. And then for Bogaerts, maybe this helps keep him healthy. I know it's mostly been a wrist issue, but just not playing as exhaustive of a position. Maybe that's something that can help kind of keep him fresh a little bit more.
100%. I think Eggy Rosario is probably going to be the guy at third before Machado comes back. Although Rosario has very limited run at the major league level at third base. Yeah. Even then, it's just kind of a shit assortment at third base when you have Manny Machado sitting there just on the shelf. I'm with you. I think the thing that we often forget is these guys have coaches. They have managers. And remember what coaches did for you when you were young? They made decisions on behalf of the team. And I love that players have agency. I love that superstars have agency. But at the end of the day, NBA head coaches are putting a playbook in, and NFL head coaches are deciding the route tree that guys are running. And MLB managers have the right to fill out the lineup card as they see fit. And it really doesn't matter. if Bogaerts is making
Yep.
25 mil and Tatis is making 25 mil. So,
They're still in the lineup. Yeah, you're still paying them to hit.
They're hitting second and third. Like they're fine, and that's what they want to do. I know that there's some enjoyment at shortstop, but man, Tatis has a platinum glove in his living room now. Like,
and he would never have had one of those at shortstop. Almost.
No.
I mean, look, I don't want to say never for a guy like that, but I think it was much less likely that it would ever happen. It definitely wouldn't have happened by now, by his 25th birthday. So yeah, I mean, I'd rather have an elite defender and right. And then again, you're. It's not like they're just plugging some other guy in there and we're going to see what happens. They're plugging a plus defensive shortstop in there immediately. So that's the thing too. It's not just, oh, we're moving Bogaerts off as short and putting another guy there and we'll see how he does, or he's an average defender. He's a great defender at short. So from that side of it too, it's just a no-brainer from a baseball standpoint. If you get past some of the quote unquote optics, and you know what's good for optics? Winning. So I think this gives them the best chance to do so.
It is the best thing for optics. A couple minor transactions before we get into the top 10 third baseman. The Royals did grab John Schreiber from the Red Sox for David Sandlin, who was selected, I want to say 11th round last year by Kansas City. I'll leave the floor to you on Sandlin because I know that you liked him a lot at the end of last year. Schreiber had a really good 2022. He had a 2.2 ERA. He was punching out about 10.5 guys per nine. The whip increased by half a point from 0.9 to 1.4 this year, and he was a very unreliable reliever for the Red Sox. Yeah, it helps bolster the big league bullpen for the Kansas City Royals. And we know, based on everything they've done this offseason, that they are making a push at the division as soon as possible. They got a big league reliever, but it cost them a starting pitcher in an organization that has been long starved for starting pitching talent.
Yeah, so it is interesting that the Royals are kind of being aggressive like this, but at the same time, Sandlin's a good pitching prospect. He's a solid pitching prospect, but you're hoping he develops into a 4 or 5. Right. Probably a good chance he ends up as a solid reliever. I honestly think he's going to stick as a 4 or 5 and probably be closer to a 5. But he's still got to do some things, and he's only pitched at the lower levels. I like the stuff, though. It's a pretty good 3-pitch mix, if you count the curveball that he sprinkles in, a 4-pitch mix. But the fastball has good ride. He gets a decent amount of swing and miss on that, and he averaged like 95 miles an hour on the fastball. He's 6'4". He doesn't get as much extension as you'd like to see, so I don't think the fastball whiff rate's going to be as good at the upper levels, but it's still going to be a solid fastball. Slider's good. That's a pitch that's above average, and his changeup working off of the fastball is above average. So you have above average fastball, probably average slider, and then above average changeup. Good command too. This guy only walked 6.5% of batters last year. I think Sandlin could turn into a decent back end of the rotation starter, only 23 years old, and he'll be 23 for the duration of the season. This is another example, though, of this is a new Royals team, not just in terms of trying to win now, in terms of the whole infrastructure, scouting, pitching identification, and development. Right. And this is a guy that they drafted in the 11th round. And within a year and change, right? I think they drafted him a year and change ago.
Yeah.
They're able to convert that into a solid, potentially 7th inning guy, right? Or Sandlin could even pitch higher leverage if he, or excuse me, not Sandlin.
Schreiber
can end up pitching higher leverage, if he looks more like 2022 Schreiber. So, I mean, that's why drafting is so important. It's not about just converting all these guys to big leaguers.
It's about building capital.
Yeah. And then converting them into big leaguers in another way, right? It's not always just, we're going to develop them into a big leaguer. It's the trade capital. So I love that the Royals are in a position now where they feel confident about their pitching development. And there was a point in time where Sandlin would be like, that's your one guy, like, don't give him up. But I think they're already in a better spot with the way that they've been able to identify and develop over the last couple of years. And then on top of that, it's just fun to see them continue to push the chips forward this year. I know that's not like, this isn't a game-changing move, but they've continued to try to strengthen that bullpen. And they traded a guy that's not going to be up in the big leagues for another couple years. And they really feel like they have a chance this year. And the vibes are got to be high. I hope fans are packing Kauffman again like they were, right after 2012, 13, 14. That's just that whole range where those Royals were hanging around, won the World Series, whatever. Like, I don't think they're going to do that, at least not for a little bit, but they're going to be competitive. And it's fun to see the Royals continue to do this. Nothing crazy. They're not mortgaging the future,
no,
but they're spending a little. They're trading some pieces here and there. And that's maybe all they need with the young core that they have to be good in the next couple of years.
And it lights a fire under that young core too, which is the most important thing. And on paper, are the Kansas City Royals the favorite to win the American League Central? No. But that division's not good. Anything can happen in that division. And the term in college basketball, you hear it a lot come tournament time, is one bid league. That league is a one bid league. The AL Central is a one bid league. They are not getting a wild card team. But doesn't matter if the division winner wins 79 games. That 79 win team is going to the postseason because you have a winner. And I think that's all Bobby Witt and Vinny and Melendez and Michael Massey and, all these guys needed to hear. Brady Singer, Cole Reagans. They just wanted a shot and they wanted a seat at the table, and they officially have a seat at the table in the American League Central. So I find it fascinating. I want to go back real quick to that one point you made about it's not just about developing talent that will help you. It's about developing talent to go acquire more talent. It's about building capital in that system. Best example is the recent San Diego Padres. At the end of 2022, they had moved Wood, Gore, Abrams, Hassel, Susana for Soto. And at the end of 2023, they have 6 top 100 guys, and Merrill, Salas, Snelling, Lesko, Iriarte, Head.
And Thorpe.
7 now.
They have 7 in our top 100.
That's ridiculous.
Yep.
And they are really good at identifying. And guess what? If they're projecting for 95 wins, they may move 3 of those guys for a superstar at the deadline because they know they can replenish.
Yep. And they could trade a couple guys, and their system's still in a good spot. And you're not even mentioning a couple other guys that really matched at the upper levels last year and maybe don't have the upside to be top 100 guys, but you got like Graham Pauley, Jacob Marcy, both guys that carry plenty of trade value as well. So those are 2 guys that could be the number 2 piece in a solid package or be swapped for a good reliever too. So the Padres just have good capital. They just seem to always have resources there, which is important now, especially in a spot when, finances might be a little bit tighter. The last thing, just to circle back on the Royals bullpen, is, look, they knew that they weren't going to turn the bullpen into an absolute strength overnight or over off season, but there's so much upside, at least in this bullpen. Several guys that, if they either bounce back or take the leap that we think they can make, you got a bunch of different potential high leverage options. I still think James MacArthur can be, a really intriguing piece. They bring in Will Smith, who, we've seen him be fantastic through stretches and has been a part of every World Series team, basically. Nick Anderson, let's see what he looks like when he bounces back. Chris Stratton, another guy that we've seen through stretches be fantastic. And then we just talked about Schreiber. It's the guy that was phenomenal 2 years ago. So I think there's just so many irons in the fire that the Royals are putting themselves in a position to have at least a couple of these guys be able to stand out and play, pretty well and be high leverage options.
Don't forget about John McMillan either. As a John McMullen, I'm rooting really hard for John McMillan, who was a rocket ship through the minor leagues last year. 2 quick free agent signings, 1-year deals. Randal Grichuk signed a 1-year, $2 million deal with the Arizona Diamondbacks. And before you make your fart noise listening to this, let me tell you that this is the perfect short end of the platoon for Jock Peterson. Perfect. Jock Peterson in 2023 against right-handed pitchers had a down year compared to his career, but he had a 786 OPS. 14 of his 15 homers came against right-handed pitching. You do not want Jock seeing a lefty. Guess what Randal Grichuk does better than almost anybody in Major League Baseball? Kills lefties. In 2023 against left-handed pitching, 122 ABs. He hit 328 with a 995 OPS. Half of his homers, 8 of his 16, came against lefties, despite left-handed pitchers accounting for under 30% of his plate appearances. This is a superstar signing. And you combine Jock against righties, Grichuk against lefties, you just signed a $20 million DH. You just got Jorge Soler, man.
And Grichuk can play some defense too. I think Jock's not the best defender. So, I think you can mix and match at times. Jock's probably going to play the DH. They're starting the DH role most of the time. But then the days where Jock's out of the lineup, you can kind of mix and match a little bit because Grichuk's a guy that can plug and play, and play some decent defense. But you hit the nail on the head. He's pretty much filling that Tommy Pham role that ended up being a really important role. Pham ended up hitting so well, he ended up playing, a lot against righties too. But Pham was acquired to mash lefties for them, and that's what he did. And now you have Grichuk kind of filling that role. I love the way that they're piecing this roster together. I think they've done a really good job of, getting the most out of either platoon situations and, realizing, look, they're not going to spend $1 trillion and be able to do things, but they have spent a little bit here and there. And then put themselves over the top with some maximization of maximizing the platoon side of things. So I think they're in a really good spot, and I like the signing a lot. And look out for the D-backs, man. I think they've done everything you could ask for because we talked about it. Like they weren't in a position where I think, oh, they're going to run it back, right? They're going to be right back there. No, they needed to do some things to I think, elevate their floor some. And I think they've done exactly that. Also interesting that the other news I think out of Arizona is that Perdomo is going to start the year at shortstop. Makes sense given that he's proven a little bit more than Jordan Lawler. But even in that lens, like through that lens, Perdomo is going to start at shortstop. If he's playing well, great, no issues there. If he's struggling, you've got one of the best shortstop prospects in baseball waiting in the wings to come up and plug in. If Perdomo does that thing where he sucks for like the first half of the season, if he flip flops what he did last year,
right? I think it was only the first month of the season that Perdomo was really good, but he was the
best player on earth. He was so good for a month that he was an all-star, even though he sucked for, I think, the next 3 months.
Correct. Yeah. Last one, Whit Merrifield to Philly on a 1-year, $8 million deal. My initial reaction was, there's no space for Whit. What are we doing? But then you look at the depth chart and you see, all right, Marsh is in a corner. You could probably move Marsh back to center where he's good. And then Whit can play left, or you have him as that utility piece that he's so good at doing. Do you think Philly just signed an everyday player?
I think Philly signed a guy that won't be labeled an everyday player, but then when you look at the stat line at the end of the year, it's pretty close.
Yeah.
Right? Like he had 378 plate appearances last year. I think he easily eclipses 450 this year. Because we just talked about platoon splits and things, right? Like, so Harper and Schwarber are, of course, going to play every single day, but you got several other left-handed hitters in that lineup. So you're going to probably want every once in a while not to be as lefty heavy and maybe want to get Stott or Marsh out of that lineup. I don't know how dramatic Stott splits are. I know Marsh, has some pretty hefty platoon splits in terms of being much more productive against righties. So one side of it is I don't want Johan Rojas in center field on opening day if I'm a Phillies fan. And now, as you mentioned, you can move Marsh over to center field and have Whit Merrifield play play left. But the other side of it is if you want to get one of those left-handed bats out of the lineup, you can either have Rojas in center field some games, have Merrifield then hit for Stott and or Brandon Marsh and have a little bit less left-handed heavy of a lineup. I'd imagine it'd be more Marsh from time to time than Stott because I think Stott's pretty much proven to be close to an everyday guy. But it just gives you another righty to spell the lefties who can play second, can play left, can play center. I think he's a perfect fit for this team. And again, Dave Dombrowski kind of identifies the personalities that fit in. It seems like Whit Merrifield will fit perfectly too. A great clubhouse guy that I think is going to get along with this group of players too.
100%. I just did a quick glance. Stott really has no difference in his splits, like a 2-point difference in batting average and OPS within 20 points of each other. But Marsh, kind of adding to your point, this guy, 292 against righties and 860 OPS. OPS drops 130 points. Batting average drops 70 points against lefties. So, there you go. You could have, a Rojas play or a Pache play, and then you have Whit slide into the outfield too.